This is Michelle Hughes from Ageless and Timeless. Today's podcast is brought to you by Water and Wellness. Recently, I had the opportunity to visit Water and Wellness at their offices, and I can tell you that as far as you and I are concerned and our health is concerned, this is one of the most important places that you can go to find water that is purified and products that will help your longevity and your overall health. Visit waterandwellness.com to learn how you can take control of your drinking water and learn about those natural additives to optimize your health and longevity. Contact Stacy at 877-296-6880. Use the Ageless code and you'll get a 20% discount on all your products.
'Cause you're amazing, just the way you are.
Welcome back to Ageless and Timeless. This is Michelle Hughes. Today, I have a very special guest joining me. His name is Robert Slovak, and he is kind of like the grandfather or the father, I'm not sure which he prefers to be called, of reverse osmosis. We all know how important water is to our health and to our life, and actually without water we would die, if we all know that. And Robert has dedicated his life to being a guru specialist in the water industry. However, he didn't start there. He began his life as a mechanical, aeronautical, and astronomical engineer and worked in the aeronautical engineering world until he discovered his life's calling. And that happened through some very interesting circumstances that I'm going to let Robert tell us about. So Robert, welcome to Ageless and Timeless. I know you're traveling today, and I so appreciate that you are taking time away from your busy schedule to be with us. Would you just tell us how you got to where you are today, and what were the epiphanies, what were the life-changing events that have caused this to happen?
Well, first of all, I'm talking to you from the Tesla Tech Conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I'm going to be talking about water at this conference. And this is quite a special place, actually, a very unusual technologies. But I also, you called me an astronomical engineer. I don't know that I was astronomical. Oh. That would be really great, but it's astronautical engineer.
Oh, I meant to say.
But you're welcome to call me astronomical from here on out.
I think that was a Freudian slip, Robert. But anyway, I meant to say astronautical. Sorry.
Very good. So, I mean, I ended up by my education, I was qualified for my first occupation in designing and so on military rockets and missiles, and that's all we have to say about that. And but I was captivated. I didn't like the military industrial complex atmosphere that much. And a new interest came to myself, and that was water. And it was in the early 1970s, and I was captivated by a new emerging technology known as reverse osmosis, which is kind of a sub-specialty out from a science called membrane separation. It's very unique, and I just was biting at the bit to enter it. So my brother and I formed a partnership, and we worked together for a long time, 50 years. I mean, it was an ideal partnership, and we self-funded research in RO design and so on for a couple of years. And then we started a company called Water Factory Systems, and it focused on the advancement of RO technology. And then we single-handedly created a new era of RO applications, we'll call them, in nearly every area. When you can do the level of purification of water that RO can do, magical things can take place. I mean, you can make the world's best bottled water with it. You can rinse microcircuits with it. You can supply water for people on kidney dialysis. You can make printing better than it ever was. And one of my favorite ones was spot-free rinse vehicle washing. So if you ever go to your local do-it-yourself car wash, you probably recall seeing one of the selections on the meter is spot-free rinse. Well, my brother and I developed that technology, so you just can drive away from the place. You don't have to wipe your car down, and there'll be no spots left on it.
That is so fascinating, Robert. I never knew that. Well, what about the fact that reverse osmosis, at least as it's been explained to me by my own personal system, depletes.
Hold on there.
Okay.
I've got to get your volume up.
Oh,
I didn't
okay,
I
no
didn't
worries.
hear you.
Can you hear me okay now?
A little better.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. What I was asking is I was under the impression that reverse osmosis depletes minerals from the water purification. Could you just spend a moment and explain, because you are the father of
Yes.
that development. So what is it that we have to do if we have an RO system in our homes to make sure that we've replenished minerals?
So RO really takes you down just to the water molecules. It eliminates, there are exceptions, almost every category of, we'll call it solute, or you can call it an impurity in water. The word minerals, when you say RO depletes the minerals, there really aren't a lot of great minerals or enough of them in typical water supplies to make a difference. So when we made those RO applications, those applications do much better without minerals, okay? Especially like rinsing silicon wafers for microcircuits. But in the body, yes, we have to have minerals in the body. They are a foundational nutrient. And minerals are just chemical assemblages of the elements of the periodic table. And reverse osmosis is capable of taking them out. And not all are good, okay? There's mercury, there's arsenic, there's all kinds of toxic elements in the periodic table. So RO is able to remove them. So when you have gotten rid of all the bad stuff in water and maybe a little bit of some good stuff that might be there in terms of minerals, you are best to replenish exactly what you should have. And that is the entire periodic table of the elements, of the minerals and trace elements. There's about 70 plus minerals and trace elements that can be added. Never do they exist in regular water supplies, or rarely. The only place they really exist in abundance, in proper proportions, believe it or not, is in ocean water. So ocean water is a sacred environment in which life actually emerged in what we call the primordial ocean. So it is the elements in that are really what should be added back to water.
And I think we're going to talk about that in a little bit here, because
Yes.
you developed through some very interesting circumstances. You brought to the United States the product that is exactly what you just described, called Quinton, and
Yes.
it's a seawater.
And
Let's leave that for a moment, because I'd like you to explain how that all came about with respect to your life's journey.
okay.
When you
So
went
in the epiphany,
right, the epiphany category.
I would say it was the realization of natural healing that was most profound. Okay. I mean, I was just on the same track that everybody else is on. You know, you grow up, you take cough syrup, you get some vaccines, and you do this. And I was on the track that was going to have me taking a bunch of meaningless pharmaceuticals for the rest of my life. But there were some moments that caused me to take a second look. And I acquired this realization through some miraculous experiences throughout my life. One involved saving my eyesight. I won't go into the details, but it was a natural substance that could have been the only thing that saved my eyesight, when all the doctors said, you know what, you're probably not going to be able to see enough to drive or read a book again. And then there was an accident I had in some very off-road mountain biking that left me paralyzed on my right side. And nothing that all the neurosurgeons said, we'll make you better, but you're going to be kind of paralyzed on your right side. But I'm not at all, as you know. And then I actually contracted a condition known as Dupuytren's contracture. It's a hereditary disease known among Eastern Europeans, which my heritage is, and it causes a buildup of tissue around the nerves in your hands, and it causes your fingers to curl into your fist, to make a fist. And it's not something that can be controlled. And the only solution that has been known is a torturous, 14 or 15 hour operation in which they go in and kind of, dissect all this stuff and scrape out this buildup around the myelin sheath of your nerves. And I explored with someone a new technique that's incredibly simple. And all of a sudden, in 4 weeks, I saw this condition going away, and I never ended up manifesting the condition. And what was interesting is that I alerted all the Dupuytren contracture associations, the doctors. I wrote to them, I emailed them, and never got a single response to it. So now that has made it to the social media and internet, and people are using the technique that I discovered.
Well, yeah. What was that technique, Robert?
That technique was really, I soaked my hands, and I soaked gauze and wrapped it around my hands from the time I went to bed till the time I woke up with DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide. Some of you know this as something that carries, it's a solvent made from wood, and it's used widely in the veterinarian industry, and it's kind of prohibited in some states to be used by humans, but it's just a natural solvent from wood. And I applied it on my hands, and maybe within 3 weeks, I saw that this buildup, which you could see in the palm of your hands, was disappearing. And I never really manifested the condition.
That's amazing.
And it was just miraculous to me. And the final thing that happened was really what led to what you had just introduced about the minerals, was in a research I was doing in a kind of remote area of Brazil. I got and contracted, which shouldn't have been a surprise to me, some life-threatening gastroenteritis. And somebody gave me these 6 glass ampules of liquid, and I'm going, what is this supposed to do? Like, I was kind of very critical because what I needed was a helicopter to take me to Rio de Janeiro to a hospital, or so I thought. But he said, you should try this, and we use this actually as our doctor, because there's no doctors where we live here. And so, I ended up trying this very okay, I'll do it. And this cured my gastroenteritis in a matter of 8 hours. And the rest is history, because I became very involved in the health industry from that point on.
So that was your most dramatic epiphany, because that changed your life in terms of your dedication to water. And
yes, I figured if God is going to keep on fixing me with all these natural things, I better get involved.
Right. So let's talk about Quinton for a moment, because you brought Quinton back to the United States, and you formed an association, as I understand it, with a company called Quicksilver. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how that evolved?
Okay, well, that was long before. That was probably 12 years later that I formed that. But I did bring this product back to the United States from Brazil, where I spent actually an additional 2 years in Brazil studying with an Argentine biologist who was an expert in this technology of using quinton which is harvested from seawater. And it was used for most of the 20th century actually as a medicine. It was in the physician's desk reference of France, and then it was revered there in Europe, but it hadn't ever come to the United States with one exception. In 1908, because this product was actually discovered and created in 1897, and in 1908, it was imported into the United States to cure child tuberculosis in the 3 children's hospitals of New York, Boston, and Chicago. And then after World War I, it kind of disappeared and was pretty much exclusively used in Europe. So in 2004, I brought it back to the United States with no intention of really being involved in it. I just said, oh, I'm doing my thing by introducing it to this unique product to the medical profession in the United States. And then somebody convinced me that I really was on a more spiritual path, and I had to be responsible for manifesting quinton marine plasma here in North America, which I accepted, and it's been a great experience from 2004 until today. And now today it is also distributed by a company that I am also involved in called Quicksilver Scientific, that makes a remarkable and highly technological form of nutrients and nutraceuticals that are able to be absorbed into the bloodstream directly from the oral cavity. So these are not nutrients that you have to swallow. And that's a whole nother story. Exactly. And Quicksilver is a magnificent company worth looking up.
Yes, I am going to contact Chris Shade is the scientist.
And Chris Shade, brilliant Chris Shade, gives some of the best webinars and seminars you have ever heard.
He's doing one, or just did one on heavy metals, which I didn't get to listen to. But
and he just came out recently with something called Keto Before 6, for those of you who understand and appreciate the value of a ketogenic diet.
I see. Well, that will be the subject for another podcast. However, I would love if you would take water, and since you know it so well, and pretend that you're teaching us lay people a class. And what would you teach us about the chemistry of water that's very simple for all of us to understand, so we also can appreciate why there are certain aspects of water that are good for us and certain aspects that are not. And you kind of touched on that a moment ago, but maybe you could expand on that for a moment.
Sure. So everybody be prepared to bring dinner in, okay, for this question.
This is a long lecture. Okay.
All right. So, I mean, water, life is not possible without water. It's kind of an accepted thing. It probably should be an official law of nature. And it is, as you know, referred to as the universal solvent, and that is the key. Because of its chemical structure and this simple H2O, but maybe not as simple as you think, as we may touch on later, but this simple H2O molecule is highly polar, and it tears things apart, meaning it dissolves them. It dissolves more things than almost any other liquid on the planet. So it extracts almost everything. So one of the things that it extracts the most are the elements of the periodic table that are typically locked into minerals that make up our planet. And when our planet was formed, it was just a hot molten sphere of minerals and rock that had chemically interacted. And as it cooled, this rock would form, our core and the mantle, etc. And an interesting thing happened about 500 million years after the Earth started to form, from just collecting dust and meteorites and asteroids, etc. From as they attracted each other with their mutual gravitation, and it just started to form this sphere we call Earth. But about 500 million years after that, it is estimated, but because no one really knows this, but it is believed that there was an event called the late heavy bombardment. And the late heavy bombardment is that the Earth, in traveling through the solar system, just ran into a multi-million year bombardment of comets. And some of you may know that comets can be as much as 2/3 frozen water, called ice. And these comets bombarded Earth just endlessly. And that left the Earth covered with water. And that changed everything, because that water, being the universal solvent, dissolved all those minerals that are composed of the elements of the periodic table. And the end point was something we call the ocean. And the Earth was covered with oceans. It is estimated that there was no visible land on the planet after the bombardment. And the land came from the Earth's own internal geological upheavals, everything, earthquakes, volcanoes. This is what created the continents that we know today. But the Earth was covered with water, and that's why they kind of call it was the perfect blue planet. There was nothing but water. So this water formed the ocean, and the ocean then, so each element, each of the 70 plus solid elements of the Earth started to dissolve to their own unique solubilities. And this is what we call seawater. And there's something so magical about seawater that whatever inspired the idea of life found that seawater was the ultimate way to proceed. One, it contained every single element that was made by God, okay? So there was nothing more to be needed. It could do anything it wanted, go any direction it wanted. And that's a very philosophical question, but life did emerge in the ocean with the help of a little sunlight and the help of a little heat and special chemicals given off by volcanic action in the sea. And here we have amino acids forming, etc., etc. And then something created the spark of life. It could have been a spark. Some scientists think it was lightning that caused the spark, that caused the amino acids to charge up and become the first living entities that were called prokaryotes. And they were kind of like bacteria and maybe some algae a little later. And these were organisms that went on and evolved over the next 2.5 billion years to get to life as we know it.
That is amazing.
And within that 2.5 billion years, this is the shocking part to me. And as I was studying, that life only existed in the ocean for 2.5 billion years. So you can understand, if you ask the question, what influenced the structure, the function, and everything about life more than any other single factor? I mean, there's nothing even close. It's called the ocean.
Does that mean that if we go into the ocean every day or as often as possible, that we're going to absorb more healthy minerals and seawater benefits, and that should be something we incorporate?
There will be a minor amount, but that wouldn't be like nutritionally sufficient. But the sea has so many other levels of energies and other things it does in interacting with the body. I think everybody knows you feel better once you've spent time in the sea. And there's a whole science that really hasn't been adopted in America, but it's very popular, continues to be. It's a therapy from, I think that probably the late 1700s, perhaps, called thalassotherapy.
Correct.
And it's an entire a paradigm built around your body's exposure to every form of the sea, whether it be the sea itself or ocean air or ocean mist, etc. So something you might check into to even attend a thalassotherapy spa in, say, northern Spain.
Correct. So, okay, so go back to the chemistry of water that, you as a scientist obviously know this backwards and forwards, but the layperson doesn't really always know if they didn't take a chemistry class. And even if they did, they probably have forgotten. So talk about what water consists of, if you were breaking it down chemically.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about just the chemical known as water, it contains two atoms of hydrogen, the first and lightest element, and one atom of oxygen. And they come together in nature and they form, with a little energy involved, and they form this bond in which they share electrons. And one side of the bond, one side of the molecule of water now, which is H2O, one side of the molecule is very positive charge, and the other side of the molecule, oxygen, is very negatively charged. And in a way, it acts like a chemical magnet. And this difference in the charge field just tears things apart, and which we call dissolving. So that's its secret, and it keeps things bound up in solution, and delivers them wherever nature carries it. In our body, that we are just an entire, as you know, by weight, we are 60 to 70% water by weight. And this water is just carrying and transporting all these chemicals and nutrients and elements and minerals and trace elements throughout the body to supply the cells with nutrients, as well as to remove their waste product. I mean, it's beyond incredible. And when I say that the body is 70%, 60 to 70% water, I mean, that's amazing, that you're a sack of water. But if you look at it from another scientific point of view, the body is really if we look at just the molecules in the body of everything, there's water molecules, there's fat molecules, there's bone molecules, everything. You're a molecular collection. But of the molecules in the body, 98.8% of the molecules that make up the body are water.
Whoa.
I mean, it is so startling. It defies really your imagination that you're 98% water by molecular listing. I mean, it's, what can you say?
Well,
water is therefore the thing to concentrate on.
Of course.
You better treat yourself to the right water, right. Expose yourself to the right water as best you can.
I was just going to say that, Robert, when you put it in that context, it would seem to me that all of us are compelled to, I love that you're drinking water. I hope it's purified water, Robert.
It is, from the Sierras.
Oh, good. Okay, so all of us are compelled to focus on water as a key to our health, and yet we have such deficiencies in our water. How, for example, how did we get to have such deficient municipal water systems? or I shouldn't even say deficient, I would should say destructive in some ways because of all the bad pollutants that are in
Okay.
water.
So I don't quite subscribe to that, and but I'm gonna justify it.
Okay, go
Okay.
ahead. I love that.
So one of the things you did want me to handle that will help me lead into this is like, what are some of the most compelling scientific developments in water technology?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I'm gonna just take one of I'm gonna take the first one on my list, and I hope you're sitting down. And the most compelling the technologies, the first one on my list would be chlorination.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Right.
Are you shocked?
No, because that was one on mine as well, and why I
Okay.
asked you.
Okay. Well, you're a brainiac, so I'm not surprised. But most people, chlorination, I hate chlorine, blah blah blah. So chlorination, frankly, has simply, saved by being able to easily disinfect water supplies, has saved more lives than any technology or any medicine in the history of humanity.
Oh.
So, I mean, people, if it weren't for chlorination, there would be millions of people would be continually sick. Hundreds of thousands would be dying, et cetera, as once happened from the 1700s till the 1800s.
Right.
There were just massive plagues and so on going on that killed millions of people. Now, does chlorination have a problem? Sure. Chlorination creates something called disinfection byproducts. And these are things, new chemicals that are formed because chlorine gets into other reactions than just kill bacteria. So it gets into reactions with organic matter in water that exists naturally, like just molecules of leaves and twigs and dirt get in the water. And so chlorine reacts with some of them to form chemicals. And these chemicals are carcinogenic. And luckily, they're quite easy to remove with water purification systems. Like activated carbon is one of the technologies that's on my list. But here's the problem going on to municipal water. And we think, couldn't they do a better job and so on? But, I applaud modern municipal water technology for being able to deliver water that doesn't harm anybody in the short term, meaning you don't have to worry about getting a disease from a modern municipal water plant, and it delivers it to your home for an incredibly reasonable cost of pennies per thousands of gallons. There's nothing that can be delivered that is as cheap as water. And it's amazing they're able to do that. Now, and so how come they don't go further? The reason is, and you'd probably vote the same way I would, is that of all the water delivered to homes and apartments and office buildings and factories, only 1.5% is used for consumption. So you can see, would you exquisitely treat 98.5% of the water when it was going to go down the toilet or going to rinse something or cool steel or be used in some kind of process? No, you wouldn't. So it doesn't make sense to treat all the water that's going out to some extremely high health protective level. It's not practical. And if they did, let's say they did, we would each have a water bill, a monthly water bill of $2,000 to $5,000. Okay, I mean, it could be done, but no one could afford it, practically speaking, and that's why. So what makes sense, and it's the industry that I represent, is doing water purification exactly as needed on the water we use for its particular purpose. For instance, drinking water, we have to do the best. We have to remove everything from the water that could hurt us and replenish what the water delivers to our bodies the best. And we call that point of use, POU, water treatment. For bathing, we would want to treat all the water just in our house, okay? And we wouldn't have to worry about disinfecting it unless we had our own well. But municipal water, you might want to remove those carcinogenic chemicals made because we chlorinated water to kill the microbes in it. So that's yet something else. And let's say your laundry. Let's say you have a lot of hardness in your water, calcium and magnesium, and the laundry comes out too scratchy to put on your baby's body. Well, you might want to remove the hardness with something called a water softener or some other technology that is emerging. So it's best to treat really water at the source. It's more economical and you do just what is needed.
So I'm so glad you segued there because I think one of the most confusing decisions a consumer can make, and I believe everybody will agree with me, is if you are evolved and enlightened enough to understand what you just said and to appreciate that and to want to be ensuring your health, then you will want to have a water purification system in your home if you can afford to.
Or bottled water.
Let's talk about the bottled water next, okay? That's a whole other subject. But so how does one decide on which water purification system is the best? And I know that we have one that you are excited about and represent with a company called Water and Wellness. And I want to hear about that. We want to hear about that. But could you just explain to us what are the key decision matrices that we need to know in order to select the right system? Because there are so many on the market, and I'm sure many of them may well be a waste of money.
Well, you bring up the grand question that I have that has frustrated me for most of my career in the water industry. I would say, yes, I do advise, if you really want to know the truth, to try to attend my presentations or listen to interviews like this one, etc. Mostly I speak not to the public, however, I speak to doctors and professionals and technologists, etc. But the water treatment in general is like a minefield of misinformation and hype. I'm embarrassed at it, but business people, or whatever we want to refer to them as, have realized that the public is so ignorant about the science of water and it's such a confusing topic that they take advantage of it. And there's more, I would say there's more lying going on in the water treatment business than there is in the used car business. Okay?
That's scary.
Yeah, it is. And it's one of the things that drove me to like presenting and speaking and making myself available. And, at this conference, as a perfect example, at this conference, Tesla Tech last year, there was, this is not the conference to talk about water, really. I mean, it's a conference that talks about physics and electricity and a lot of other phenomenon. But last year, what happened was a speaker couldn't make it on the final day. And somebody here who ran this conference asked people, does anybody know somebody who can speak about some kind of technological topic? And somebody pointed to me and he said, that guy over there can talk about water. And so they came over to me and said, would you mind filling in for this person? You can talk about water, but you can't, here's the only rule. You can talk about anything you want, and we appreciate you filling in on moment's notice, and you can talk for 1 hour and then 5 minutes of questions. Okay? So I started and I'm looking and I'm going, geez, I must have talked for an hour already. but it was already an hour and a half.
Oh,
And I looked over and I just talked into the microphone, is it, aren't you going to like stop me? Because I didn't even realize I went over, and the guy goes, does anybody want this guy to stop? And everybody goes, no.
oh,
So I ended up speaking 3 hours
oh my goodness,
at a
Robert.
conference I wasn't even invited to speak. And it just reflected that people had never heard this stuff before. They were, we use the word blown away at what, and these are all like top technology people. They were blown away at what they didn't know. And when I do like a survey in the audience, tell me, sir, tell me what water supply you're on. Tell me what water treatment you have. I'd say well over 90% of the people have completely the wrong stuff to treat their water.
Wow. Well, so can we cut to the chase? I'm afraid if we run out of time and I don't get to ask you all my important questions, I'll be very disappointed. But then again, we can always have you come back. And
So
3
I
hours will
believe
go
for
racing
drinking
by.
water, I think you should treat drinking water and bathing water separately.
Okay.
Okay.
But
Don't try to, it's very popular. One of the, whatever the hype things is that, oh, we can just put something in your home that treats all your water and it'll be like bottled water in every tap. Forget it. Not for people who would listen to your show, people who really want to know they're getting the right thing. So that doesn't work. So I believe in having a special system for making drinking water and a special system if you want. It's not as important as the drinking water, but to treat the water for bathing. So one of the things is, like, if you were a family and you had young daughters, I would say you better have a point of entry water system, because if you're on a municipal supply, you will definitely have disinfection byproducts from chlorination in the water. And these byproducts, I said, were carcinogenic, and they try to control them as best they can, but they also have been known to be linked to miscarriage. Okay? So you would want your daughters to be protected from that contaminant, and by putting in a point of entry, meaning whole house filter system.
so could we talk for a moment about the one that you have
Sure.
developed? And
The one
and
we
I know it
we
has a
sell a
number.
product. We sell a product. Water and Wellness.com
Okay.
sells a product called Aqua True, and it is a refinement of everything that I've done over the years of designing water stuff. And it is a countertop multi-stage reverse osmosis system that is incredibly simple and user-friendly. And it doesn't require any connection to plumbing, which is something that I applaud for technical reasons. And it also protects the user from something that is a problem in all water systems, and that is out of control microbial growth. So many of you say, oh, probably some of the people listening to the show are going, oh yeah, I have a reverse osmosis system. I bought it at Costco. It's under my sink, et cetera, et cetera. But I learned as I started to talk more and more in the medical area, like I speak typically at conferences like the autism conferences, and people want to know, what I have a child with autism, what kind of water should I give him to protect him? And I would tell these people, you cannot give your child with autism water from an under-sink RO system, or you should not. And they're just baffled because they thought they were doing the best they could. And I said, children with autism typically have very serious gut problems. Their microbiome is seriously damaged. If you give them water from your under-sink RO system, you're going to compound that problem many times. And they're horrified. So I teach those attendees at those conferences that if you have that system and you don't have the funds to get rid of it, then you need to learn how to sterilize that water before you give it to your child. And that's another story. Mm-hmm. So this system we're talking about, the AquaTrue, eliminates all of these little problems that previous system designs have been subject to. And the AquaTrue is unfortunately, it does have to go on some surface. It doesn't tuck away like, other appliances that you might like, other filters, but it has every feature that I consider ideal in treating water for drinking. It's a 4-stage reverse osmosis plus activated carbon filter, which is simply ideal, user-friendly, and removes virtually every category of contaminant from water supplies.
How do you keep it bacteria free?
Well, the bacteria doesn't really want to grow in it to begin with. One is that it does have. It's more of a fact that the other under sink systems have sealed storage tanks that are made out of materials that become like an incubator for microbes. And because of the inability to clean that tank, people don't even remember they have a tank. And it's there for years and years, becoming more and more contaminated. So in the system on the AquaTrue, it has a container that because of its unique materials, it's not subject. Bacteria aren't interested in growing in the tank, but one can rinse it out or wash it every day if you want. It just takes seconds to clean the tank if you want.
Just soap and water, Robert?
You can use soap and water. What I do to mine, like every 3 months, I just put a cap full. And I'm not even sure that that's justified, but I just put a cap full of hydrogen peroxide in the tank with water in it, and I leave it for 15 minutes and I pour it out and then I'm done.
That's good. So, okay, I'm so I'm so excited to have you here, Robert. This has just been so amazing, eye-opening, and educational. And I think what we have to do, because we only have 5 minutes left, is to have you tell us how can we, if we want to, reach Water and Wellness. And I know you mentioned that you wanted to offer our guests some special consideration, our viewers, special consideration for basically converting to a healthy water system, and you're trying to provide incentive to do that. So could you talk for a moment about Water and Wellness, how we reach the company if we want to order the system, and anything else specific about that offer?
So with the Ageless program, and also Ageless is the code.
That's correct. Ageless or Michelle Hughes will get them there, correct?
So, you're taking me right out of my element when it comes to talking about water and specials and so on, but right. I'm going to do the best I can.
Okay.
So Water and Wellness can be accessed by the website www.waterandwellness.com. And we are making a special for this, and I believe there's a $100 discount made in your behalf.
Oh, that's incredible.
It is incredible. And
so what I
can't tell you is how long it will last. Right. Those are details that are beyond me. And but we will post this on the website next week.
Okay.
And it will explain the Ageless benefits, not only for this system, but there is something else that you need to consider, and that is the ketone minerals and trace elements.
Right.
And we also have another product that is molecular hydrogen that helps to control and manage oxidative stress in the body.
Right.
Perhaps the new condition of modern man, oxidative stress. And then we have some, if your body is acidic, we have a special alkalizing powder, and we have a brand new, very advanced vitamin C, unique form of vitamin C called ribose C.
Oh, I know
So
ribose.
there's some things, and all of those things will be with a discount. I can't give you the details of those items because I just don't know it.
That's okay. Is there somebody that our viewers could contact if they wanted to ask questions or?
Well, sure, because our customer service, and you're asking me to give you that customer service number,
That would be wonderful.
and I'm going to do it.
And I'll post this on my website as well, and we'll, which isn't active yet, but will be, we hope, next week. So hope, there will be a way for people to look back if they forgot.
So our customer service number, we have several customer service people from, I think it's 9 to 5 or 9 to 4. And the number is 877-296-6880. But look for our posting about Ageless, and we will have something that defines exactly what we're doing for you, being nice enough to join us and listen to me talk about a very
Robert,
unusual subject.
I have to say, I'm so honored that you're going to be doing that, because that really puts a legitimacy to my vision of providing awareness and exposure to the products and services that exist today that have efficacy. And water, of course, being what all you've told us and shared with us today, is probably number one in terms of what we can do to improve our health. So we're going to run out of time, but I want to prepare our viewers for your next interview, if you'll agree to come back, because we have a real game-changing development in water. And I've been studying it now since I spoke with you about 3 months ago. And I'm just going to mention it today. And if anyone wants to look it up, there is quite a bit of information at UCLA. It's called deuterium depleted water. And I'm not going to even tell you what it is. I'm just going to say, invite you, if you'd like, to go and look up deuterium, D-E-U. Well, you spell it, Robert.
DEUTERIUM.
Right. Deuterium depleted water.
It happens to be in every glass of water you drink.
Exactly.
And it's, remember we said that water molecules were 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. Well, not all hydrogen is the same. And there is a special form of hydrogen that exists in nature and is in all water called deuterium. It's actually twice as heavy as regular hydrogen. And the story is so amazing that you have to tune in for it, because this is a relatively new discovery that is just getting out to the health-informed public.
Okay, well, we have to unfortunately say goodbye, say adieu. I know you have to get back to your conference. However, now we've teased our audience to come back and listen to you. That 3 hours that you spoke last year, that would go by so fast for us. So we're looking forward to you spending at least 3 hours. You've just spent 1 hour. Now you have 2 more to.
You were a great host, and this was tremendous fun for me, really.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that. And you are a wonderful speaker, and you've shared so much information. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll be back, as
Thank
Arnold
you.
said.
Bye, Michelle.
Have a wonderful conference. Bye-bye, Robert.
Thank you.
Wow. This has been quite an eventful day, listening to one of the foremost experts in the water industry. I think you all know by listening to him for the last hour that this is a man who's coming from science, not from theory, as so many of these other so-called experts are coming from. So if you want to read about Robert Slovak, you can just Google his name, and you will see there is so much depth to his background and to his knowledge. So I encourage you to do that, and be prepared, because we are coming back with Robert on another podcast, and I want him to spend that time talking to us about this game-changing development in water. So this is Michelle Hughes. I'm signing off for Ageless and Wellness, and I wish you all a beautiful day.